Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. We're looking at the MLB slate today for Monday. We have a 6-game MLB slate as well as a 2-game NBA slate. So just a nice kind of relaxing day to get started for the week. Baseball slate, one of the smaller ones we've had recently, 6 games, so perfectly right in the wheelhouse. Let's go ahead and get started. As always, appreciate it if you guys hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. You can follow on Twitter at the DFS Process for updates, and let's get started. So, looking at the lineups for today for the 6 game slate, not a ton of teams jump off the page as teams to stack here. I think the Detroit Tigers are somewhat interesting against Sam Hentges just because Hentges has been one of the worst pitchers on this slate. He gives up home runs at a pretty unbelievable clip. He's given up 5 home runs in just 15 innings. He has 9 walks in those innings, 23 hits. Gives up a 343 batting average. Has not been good at all, whether he's at home or on the road. He's kind of gotten blown up, especially in his most recent start. He got absolutely blown up against the Angels in just a few innings. Now, this Tigers lineup isn't the best, but they do have some decent hitters that are somewhat good against lefties, like Robbie Grossman, Goodrum, Ramos, and then Scope has always been good against lefties. So those are the main ones I would look at. And then other teams that look somewhat appealing to stack up, or at least get a couple of one-offs from, are the Chicago White Sox. I mean, they're always good against left-handed pitching. Kim is a good pitcher in terms that he doesn't give up a ton of runs. He doesn't give up a ton of home runs. But I would say the White Sox really never get shut out by any lefty. They're always putting up runs unless it's Mike Minor. But he's on the season. He's given up just 1 home run in 22 innings. I wouldn't go crazy with the White Sox stack, but I would definitely look to like a Jose Abreu, just because he's absolutely monstrous against left-handed pitching. He's starting to hit the ball really well recently. 3 home runs in his last 10 games with a 400 batting average during that span. He's starting to heat up at home here. Not a ton of great options on this slate, so the White Sox have to be in the mix. And then I like the Oakland A's a bit. Kikuchi also have been pretty good this year. He will give up a lot more home runs than Kim. So I'm looking at guys like Laureano, who already has 11 bombs on the season. Chad Pinder is a cheap guy. You can go Lowry, you can go Marcana, Chapman. They look like my second favorite full stack. I would rather go with a Oakland A's full stack than a White Sox full stack. And then the Orioles are the 4th team that I'm somewhat looking at. And then you could always go with a couple of one-offs from the Twins, especially Donaldson, Garlick, and then depending on who's in the lineup here, that would make a difference. But pitching-wise here, one of my favorite pitchers is Blake Snell, going up against this kind of lefty-heavy team for the Brewers. Looking at the projected lineup here, normally teams will just load up on righties against Blake Snell. He's good against righties too, but this Brewers team has 1, 2, 3, at least 4 lefties in the lineup here. 3 out of their 8 position hitters are lefties, including their best hitter, Yelich. He's going to have to deal with not a ton of good right-handed bats except for Kane and Garcia. At the bottom, like Pena, Uaris, Adames, isn't super scary. But do think that Blake Snell only a 3.5 total for the Brewers. He looks like a great option. And then we can look to definitely look to another side, and that is maybe go Frankie Montas here, 3.6 total for the Mariners. Montas, a guy that is good with the strikeouts. He's up and down, but this is a spot where I think he'd have success against a strikeout-heavy team. At home in the Coliseum, where he gets at a big ballpark, so he doesn't have to worry about giving up too many home runs, as that ballpark does eat up a ton of them. On the season, he's given up 9 home runs. If you look at his home road splits, he's actually been garbage at home, so that's pretty surprising, but there's probably a couple starts where he got blown up. He got blown up against the Dodgers and the Twins, but recently he's been a lot better. I think he can continue that against this Mariners team. So pitching-wise, you can always go up to Woodruff. I don't really want to go to Means, even though he's been good. I'd rather go to Woodruff or go down to like maybe Lynn. But Blake Snell at only $8,900, he sticks out. He's been good this year, like he always is. Good with the strikeout, 60 Ks in just 40 innings. His Brewers lineup does have a lot of Ks in there. Should have success against this lineup. And then it's going to be Frankie Montas as another guy that I like. Turnbull is in the mix coming off of his no-hitter, but he might get some ownership because of that. I'd rather go to Montas at only $6,200. First base, I already plugged in Jose Abreu just because he's so good against lefties. You can look at his numbers if you want to. But they are, off the page, one of the best lefty hitters in the game. This year he's batting .273 with 4 home runs and just 33 at-bats against lefties. That is awesome, especially for power. .424 ISO, .697 slugging percentage for him against lefties, 42% hard hit rate. The fly ball rate is almost double for him compared to righties. And then even career-wise, he's an absolute beast. 307, 53 bombs against lefties. The ISO is 248. The slugging is 555. Everything looks great for Jose Abreu today. He's got to be one of my favorite first base options. Another guy that I do like is Nico Goodrum. He's $4,000 going up against the lefty and Hentis. He's been not the best hitter this year for the Tigers. Not a lot of their hitters have been. But he's also pretty good against lefties. And Hentis is not scary. A pitcher should be able to make contact. And it's one of the few spots I think you can stack up the Tigers on this slate. Just on any slate, just because there's not a ton of good offense. Well, a lot of good offense, but not a ton of good teams in good spots. Tigers are probably the team in the best spot today to put up some runs. 256 average for him against lefties this year. Last year was 333, but that was only 33 at-bats. 2019, he batted 361. Just looking at his career numbers, the average is almost 100 points higher. The ISO isn't the greatest. He doesn't have a ton of power against lefties, only 5 home runs for him. Still somewhat okay with the 150 ISO, but the WRC Plus is there. The slugging percentage is there. The batting average is most definitely there. $4,000 for him. He looks good. And then in the outfield, we'll touch on like second base and stuff. Second base, you have Cronenworth as your most expensive guy. That's nothing taking anything away from him, but that just shows you how pretty weak this position is today. So you definitely can go to like a Jonathan Scope if you're going to be stacking up the Tigers, and he bats second in the lineup. He looks great. Jed Lowry's been good this year for the A's. He's always good against lefties. Chad Pinder is a lefty masher, somewhat. Just hits the ball really hard against lefties. Third base, a lot deeper of a position. You can go Chapman, you can go Ramirez, you can go with Moncada. Moncada's better against righties, but still would be playable. I would probably go Donaldson, $4,400. He's always good against lefties. Means is solid, but I would go with the one-off or two-man, at least two, like a one or two-man stack from the Twins today. That would probably include Donaldson, especially if they're without Cruz. And that's kind of it. And then shortstop, it's Nico Goodrum, it's Tim Anderson as my favorites. In the outfield here, I go Ramon Laureano, 56. Be able to pay up for a bat because we're going a couple of cheap pitchers with Snell and Montas. And Laureano's been so good this year. Overall, he steals bases, he hits for home runs, he does everything you want, hits for a decent average. Also very good against lefties. Look at his numbers. This year he's batting .382 against lefties and 55 at-bats, 3 home runs. And career-wise, .294 against lefties with 11 bombs for him. The ISO is sitting at 208, 133 WRC plus, strikeouts a little bit lower. Love Laureano the way he's been hitting the ball this year. It has to be looking like a pretty solid option. Also has already 8 stolen bases in the first 2 months. And then the last guy, a couple of other options here to look at. But if we're going to be stacking up the Tigers, I think Robbie Grossman is probably one of my favorites, just because he's one of their better hitters. Also gives you some speed on the base paths, stolen bases. He's good against lefties as well. If you look at his numbers, he's starting to hit the ball well. Recently, in his last 10, he's batting .333 with a couple of bombs. I always like to go with some hot hitters in baseball, and he has like 2-hit game, 3-hit game, 2-hit game in his last 4. Really seeing the ball well. Hentis isn't the best swing and miss guy. I expect the Tigers to hopefully put some contact up against him and not strike out too much. So that's it for DraftKings for this baseball slate. Let's look at FanDuel. Alright, over on FanDuel, pitching-wise, you have Woodruff as your most expensive guy, followed by Lance Lynn. Both guys are playable. I still like Blake Snell a bunch, $9,300. And then I don't think you need to go super cheap at your pitcher, just because there are some cheap bats. But it would probably look at Montas, but I would rather go to Blake Snell. Catcher first base, you can easily get up to Jose Abreu if you wanted to. He's only $3,700. Not a ton of expensive first base options. You can go with potentially go with Cron against a lefty. You can go Candelario. And you can go all the way down to like a Wilson Ramos or a Sean Murphy. Second base, not super deep. You have Goodrum, like no bat. At second base is over $3,000, so another reason why you should be able to pay up at pitcher pretty easily. Goodrum is a nice cheap guy. You can go with Scope, maybe Madrigal if you look into a White Sox stack today. Third base, looking at like Donaldson, looking at Moncada a bit. Maybe Arenado just because he's a really good hitter. And then Candelario is fine. Shortstop, probably go Tim Anderson here. He's just really cheap for facing off against lefties. He's awesome against lefties. He always hits for a high average. He has speed on the base paths, hits for power. He's also missed some time this year, which is why he only has 5 bombs. It would have been a lot more than that. He started off the season really hot, then he hurt his hamstring, but he's starting to look better at the plate, except for his last week. He struggled a little bit, but over the past couple weeks, he's starting to really hit the ball well. $3,400 for Anderson. Pretty easy to get to him at shortstop if you wanted to. And then you can go Robbie Grossman is still very affordable at only $2,900. One of my favorite Tigers bats to look at. And Laureano is just one of my favorite one-offs on the slate just because he's facing off against a lefty, and he gives you that perfect power-speed combination that just gives you a ton of upside and gives you such a high floor. Like, he happens to have a stolen base, happens to hit a home run, he's going to put up north of 25, 30 fantasy points on FanDuel. Looks great at $3,600, especially when you look at the spend-ups. We have Trey Mancini as your most expensive bat, and he's been good this year, but we don't have a Mike Trout on this slate to pay up for. We don't have a Juan Soto, Acuna. Pretty thin in terms of studs to pay up for on the slate, which is why Laureano makes a lot of sense. So that is it for this baseball video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I will be making the NBA video now as soon as I post this one, so stay tuned for that if you're going to be playing this 2-game NBA slate tonight. But thanks for watching. Best of luck tonight, and I'll see you all next time.